in the state legislature, and often heard from my community, and would, I had sort of this method where if I had something from my constituents, it went right into my bill files, so I would know right away. And in particular, I ended up voting against a budget that impacted my local fire department because it was inadequate funding for training for them. And I think under other circumstances, I would have supported that budget, but they were very, very clear that it was dramatically inadequate. My community faced the impacts of the 2020 wildfires, and I fought hard for additional funding for our firefighters, and in particular for the community that was impacted throughout the course of that. It's a privilege to do that work, but the job of state representative was always to put my constituents first.
Thank you. I believe that the vociferous business rejection of the corporate activity tax has hardened my position to say that that tax needed to be revisited. I don't think business was adequately consulted. At the time that I voted for it, the business community was split. There were promises, as I've already alluded to, made and not kept about the tax. But it certainly, as I visited with businesses, and they have informed me of the absolutely paralyzing effect that that tax has had on their ability to stay in Oregon and to make money in Oregon, that's been one that I've listened very carefully to business.
I feel like I need to correct the record. Senator Johnson knows that I didn't agree with Governor Brown's decision to vaccinate educators over seniors, so just for the record. But I think community input is always central to the work that I've done as Speaker. I'll give you a particular example.
I should be back,
Listening
dude.
to folks
I don't know
who
what's
live in
going
Mount
on.
Hope
It
County on
sucks.
the eastern Oregon border with Idaho, making sure they have a special
YouTube studio
economic
just
zone
keeps
so
shutting
they
down
can
for
deal
no
with some of
reason.
the issues of being competitive with
Like
the
Streamlabs
communities
is
in
going
Idaho.
fine.
Listening to the legislators in the communities there, I supported legislation year after year to support those communities on our border because that's what it means to serve the entire state.
Our next series of questions will come from Patsy Smolin.
Senator Johnson, what can you guarantee that you will accomplish as governor in your first year in office?
I can guarantee that we will transform how we do politics in Oregon if we have an independent governor who is willing to veto legislation that doesn't represent all of Oregon. It would be simply transformational to have a governor not beholden to the ideology or the agenda of a political party, to say that I'm loyal only to the citizens of Oregon. It is their input that matters. Again, what I said about signing a budget into law or a bill into law, or especially appointments to boards and commissions that weren't embraced in a bipartisan way, would change the whole dynamic after 40 years of partisan majority, to make sure that every zip code, every geographic region of the state had a place at the table would be transformational. What I can promise you is that if Tina gets elected, Oregon will end up woke, broke, and our forests up in smoke.
In the first year of my administration,
I like
there will
that.
be fewer people living on the streets. Our neighbors need to get off the streets. We need to
Woke,
help them get there. There will be more transitional shelters. There will be more people working daily,
And our forests
every
up
day, 10 by
in
10, with individuals who
smoke.
are living on our streets. We will be
I'm
on
not
a
even going to
pathway
listen to what
building
Tina's
more
fucking
housing
saying, because
across
she's
our
already
state.
been
We
doing
have
this
a
for like
housing and
9
homelessness
years.
crisis across our
She's already
state.
been wasting money
And
doing this shit.
The dollars that are
Woke,
promised
broke,
to
and our
improve
forests up
addiction
in
and mental
smoke.
health treatment services in this state, in every corner of our state, will be better, and we will have outcomes to show it.
Yeah, I can promise Oregonians that I will reverse the policies that Kate Brown has adopted and put into place by executive order that have harmed families and have driven up costs. Whether or not that is coming at the gas pump or whether or not it's already happening now as homes are being built today, I will tear up her executive orders that are driving up costs for Oregonians. And to be clear, I will get politics out of the classroom. The governor is the superintendent of public instruction. I am committed to getting parents back in and politics out of our classrooms.
Representative Kotek, many rural Oregon property owners are currently not able to obtain property insurance on their homes. What would you do to ensure that property owners in all of Oregon are able to obtain property insurance in higher risk areas?
Is her jacket
Well, this is
flames?
something that
That's awesome.
became an issue in my
This
very own
dragon
district
flames?
in North Portland because of after Katrina, the Corps of Engineers came in and say we couldn't certify the levees in my district to be able to provide flood insurance for folks who lived along these levees. Across our state, when we are adjusting to changing environments related to wildfires or drought, we have to make sure that we provide assistance for Oregonians wherever they live to be able to be resilient in the face of the changes that are affecting our state because of climate change. And that's one of the reasons I was surprised that Representative Drazen would have voted against Senate Bill 762. That was hundreds of millions of dollars in wildfire prevention and helping our communities be more resilient. And because if we can help our communities make the case that they are being more safe,
What'd
I
she
think
say,
that will help them get the
762?
insurance coverage they need.
Measure 762?
Here's the tough thing
Is that what it
about
was?
single party control, is that there might be something about the bill you really, really love and really need for your community. And then it is just chock full of a bunch of stuff that's going to hurt somebody, that's going to target someone, that's actually going to make life hard for someone that doesn't have to be that way. You know, in particular, the wildfire risk maps, I have been clear that I will reverse the wildfire risk maps. That was another example of Kate Brown's overreaching, abusive approach to her administration, and it's got to end.
I have unique experience with floods. Tillamook floods all the time, and I represented them in the legislature. I helped rebuild the town of Vernonia twice after two 500-year floods in the space of a decade, so I know that well. I warned Jeff Golden when Senate Bill 762 was coming through the legislature that those wildfire maps were not going to work, computer generated. I called for the Department of Forestry to scrap those maps, and the day I called for them to scrap it, they did. And so I have experience in making those towns resilient in Tillamook and in Vernonia.
I absolutely love Betsy.
Representative Drazen,
She's amazing.
what policies would you propose or support to make the dream of home ownership more attainable for Oregonians?
Yeah, this is such an important question for all Oregonians. With rising home prices right now, we know that the dream of home ownership is becoming less and less attainable for far too many Oregonians. I will protect the mortgage interest deduction, which has in fact come under scrutiny by both Speaker Kotek and our current Secretary of State with a very, very political
I didn't
review
know it was
of that
so hard to
program.
buy a house.
You have to have that program to continue to keep people in their homes. You also need to protect first-time homebuyer programs, and you have to reduce the regulatory burden that's out there. We have got a state that is just creating rule after rule after rule, trying to be all things to all people, and then imposing it on to what the requirements are to build a home. It costs more, it's slower, everything about it impacts Oregonians who want to be homeowners. All of that has got to change.
We have a housing affordability problem because we have a supply problem. We absolutely have to make more land available for residential as well as industrial. We've lost now Intel, the tallest tree in our Silicon Forest, to Ohio, a piece of their portfolio, and we missed the opportunity to have Micron here because we have inadequate supply. I have young people on my staff who bemoan the fact that they will never be able to own a house. We've got to get regulations out of house building. We've got to get the legislature out of telling developers and home builders how to build homes. I agree with Ms. Drazen.
I think the irony of this conversation is both Senator Johnson and Representative Drazen opposed efforts to keep people housed, not only in the Great Recession, when it comes to Senator Johnson, but in the current pandemic recession, trying to keep people from suffering from foreclosure. When I tried to protect people, they fought that. I have a plan on my website that does include specific actions that we need to take to help people
She's got a plan on
buy
her
that
website.
home. Because when more people own their homes, they build intergenerational wealth, and they provide a community where people are more stable and secure for the future.
Senator Johnson, as governor, how would you approach the state's government-to-government relationship with the tribes as a sovereign people in government? What, if anything, would you do differently from previous administrations?
Be absolutely respectful of the sovereign Indian nations. My father was one of the last non-Indian owners of Warm Springs Forest Products that was located on the Warm Springs Reservation.
She's
so
an Indian
I have a
also.
long tradition
Jesus.
in history going back respectfully with particularly the Warm Springs. I think that Governor Brown, for all of her shortcomings, has established a very good relationship
really
with the
wish
sovereign
we could
nations,
elect her.
and I would intend to honor
This
and
would be
respect
hilarious.
those relationships with the tribes.
I believe the nation-to-nation arrangement between the state of Oregon and our 9 federally recognized tribes is a sacred trust that as governor, making sure I have strong relationships with those communities. I've already started that, started visiting with our recognized tribes in a formal fashion to understand their concerns and their needs, making sure within state government that in my office, there's actually a designated person to make sure issues of consultation with the tribe do not fall through the cracks, because I think that's happening right now and we could improve that.
What?
So I absolutely will continue in that same tradition. I agree with my opponents on this issue. It's absolutely essential that we have a respectful working relationship with the tribal governments, and certainly as they have needed help from the legislature and as they need help from the governor's office, to be a partner in supporting them.
They're their own independent nation. They don't need any help.
Representative Kotek, as governor, what do you see as the state's responsibility to provide adequate health care for all its residents?
Oh, here we go.
I believe that when people are healthy, our communities are healthier. Even before I was in the legislature, at Oregon Food Bank, one of the biggest things that would cause people not being able to buy their own food was medical debt, not having access to health insurance. So I have fought for years to make sure
Insurance
almost every
doesn't solve
Oregonian,
medical
from children
debt, jackass.
to older adults, have access to health insurance. But it's not enough to be insured. Particularly if you live in a rural community, you could have all the insurance in the world, but if you don't have a provider that can provide that care, it's kind of meaningless. So as governor, my focus will be on improving access to the health care that comes along with that insurance, making sure that people can get the mental health and addiction treatment they need. That is health care. Making sure they get the dental care they need, making sure we have the providers in all communities, and optimizing the use of telehealth so people don't have to travel as far to get the care they need. That's what I've done as the Speaker of the House, and I'll continue to do that as your
I don't
governor.
believe you because
Yeah,
it doesn't
the
work.
Speaker's approach to universal health care will swamp out every other budget item in the state. It is a short-sighted approach to our state's budget, and it is absolutely inappropriate and unnecessary. If Oregonians like the government
Who's a failed
took over
leader,
their
Tina?
health care over the course of COVID,
Or Betsy?
they will love
Probably
universal
Tina.
health care under Tina Kotek. It is not a good idea. We need to continue to improve access and quality to care without having a state takeover of our health care.
Healthcare needs to be affordable, accessible,
Tina's
and
full of shit.
clinically high quality. You have that here in the Rogue Valley. I've toured the new hospital addition that Asante is doing that. I would very much maintain the CCO structure, although it has to be run better than Pat Allen and the Oregon Health Authority are running it. And I completely agree
Good to
with
see
Ms.
you, Taco
Drazen that if
Lover.
you like
Glad
the
you're
way
here.
DMV has handled
Cheers.
your driver's license renewal, you're going to love the state running healthcare. We have yet to roll out programs with any efficacy or accountability, and to have the state in the healthcare business would be a disaster.
Representative Drazen, this question
I
is
agree.
for you to begin with. You have all served
But
in
Betsy
the
was
legislature.
in
As
charge of,
governor, how will you work
some of
with
that
the
stuff.
legislature to ensure you are responding to the needs of the state?
Yeah, I look forward to the opportunity to work with the legislature to achieve durable solutions to the challenges facing our state. And my priorities through my roadmap for Oregon have been clear: to focus on homelessness, affordability, community safety, and education. Oregonians need change. And the best way to achieve change is to restore balance in our civic life and to restore accountability. We have for far too long had one party with one agenda advancing what they think that Oregonians should live under. We've got to return local control. We've got to go back to respecting people. We have got to get to the point where government doesn't always know best. We take care of the core functions of government, and we remind Oregonians that they are in charge of their own best future.
I agree with much of what Ms. Drazen has said, but this is going to be an interesting opportunity for a governor to reestablish relationships with the legislature. The composition of the legislature is changing dramatically. Leadership on the Senate side is changing. We'll have a new governor. I would work very diligently to find that middle ground. I've already talked about the fact I'm not running for miscongeniality. I'm running to fix stuff. And I can't imagine that legislators, Republican or Democrat, are happy to go back to their districts with some of the mess that now exists on Oregon streets. I think it would be an easy case to ask Rs and Ds to work together. They would welcome it, I believe, working with an independent governor.
I think it's important to have a new governor who pays attention to what our state agencies are doing. I'm not interested in
Betsy
being a
is
super
awesome.
legislator. I believe in the balance of power and the different branches. The legislative branch has their role. As the chief executive of the state, making sure I'm recommending good budget investments to make sure the function of the state can be met. And I believe in holding our state agencies accountable and having a customer service, consumer-driven state government that can be more efficient and effective. And that will be my focus.
I don't think Tina's
Senator
ever had a
Johnson,
real
We'll
job.
get this question first. The Oregon Water Resources Department tells us the southern portion of the state is responsible for approximately 50% of Oregon's water complaints, and the vast majority of them are about illegal marijuana growers. Are there any policy initiatives you would support as governor to ensure our water is going to the right place?
Yes, two things. One is have a well-run agency. I have not been impressed with how Water Resources has provided guidance anywhere around the state on dealing with issues of water, different kinds of mitigation or augmentation. The second thing is, I've already mentioned it once, but I'll mention it again. The governor has unique tools in the governor's toolbox that includes the Oregon State Police and the National Guard. We need enforcement. I think what's happening in Jackson and Josephine County with water theft and the concomitant pollution, the abuse of pesticides, the human trafficking that's going on, just calls out for additional enforcement. And I would certainly not be shy about working with the local sheriff, the local law enforcement, the local DA, and I'm proud to have many of their endorsements, working with those professionals to try to make sure that we are coming after the criminals that are stealing water and giving rise to some of these complaints to Water Resources. I'm proud to be endorsed by 90 working law enforcement people, and I would rely on them for guidance and advice.
As governor, I will work with our
I'm with
federal
her.
authorities to crack down on these legal grows that are stealing water, trafficking human beings.
It's not even
and
about the
frankly
water. The
destroying,
water's hardly
communities
any
with
of it.
violent activities. The last time I was here in the community, I was sitting down with some farmers talking about their water needs and listening to the concerns of how the limited amount of water was affecting them. The number one goal as governor is to prioritize water and to really understand how we can, as Oregonians, come together to use this limited resource wisely and effectively so people can all have what they need.
Yeah, Southern Oregon is facing a unique challenge down here. I mean, the cartel activity down here has got to stop, and it is going to take an all-hands-on-deck approach to get that done. Engagement, certainly with federal authorities, but enforcement on our side is critical. You know, but I will fire agency heads. Let me be clear about this. Kate Brown's agency heads will not remain. The Oregon Water Resources Department takes years to process a permit. They are a train wreck, and I will change leadership at that agency.
Representative Kotek, Oregon currently ranks 43rd in the country in the percentage of high school students going directly into higher education. What, in your opinion, is the logical connection between that statistic and the state's future economic development?
Well, certainly the goal of our public education system, and I'm a product of public education, is to make sure, first of all,
Obviously.
to increase graduation rates. And you'll see in my website, I call for increasing our graduation rates over the next 4 to 5 years so more students are graduating and have a pathway. And it's not all about going to college. We want to make sure that our young people have a pathway to what works best for them. Maybe that's in the trades or starting their own business or getting a 2 or 4 year degree. When we have young
Her eye twitched when
Oregonians
she said that.
understanding their potential and finding that right path, we will have the workers we need. We will have the small businesses we need. And that is why I supported $1 billion more per year for our schools in the Student
agree,
Success
dude.
Act.
She's just-
An act, by the way, that
I don't
both
think she's ever had a
my
real
opponents
job.
here oppose now. We have to fully fund career and technical education in our schools if we are going to provide that pathway to those living wage jobs and the future that our economy depends on, as well as the lives of our young people.
We have to recognize that schools are
You
mostly
know,
stupid.
Oregon has
and
always
technical
benefited from
education is where it's
in-migration
at.
to support workforce needs. And with the state of our state right now, that's coming to an abrupt halt. We need to restore quality of life across our state. When it comes to the tie between kids that are moving on to higher education and what we need in our workforce, we need about 300,000 folks to enter into some version of a certificate or a higher education program to meet the 120,000 additional jobs we know we need in the next decade. To get that done, it's going to take supporting higher ed and meeting students where they are.
We've got to recognize that Kate Brown's policies, supported by Tina Kotek, that shut our kids out of school for 2 years, have had a very deleterious effect. We cannot have a robust economic climate absent a workforce, a trained workforce. So we're going to have to put remedial teachers into our system right now. We've gotten the test scores back that show academically we've cheated our kids. We don't yet, have not yet calculated the mental, emotional, and social damage that we've done to our kids. The relationship between education and economic development is essential, but we've got some catching up to do.
See Tina's face? They cut away real quick.
Representative Drazen, as governor, what specific policy initiatives would you champion to address the growing unhoused population in Southern Oregon?
Yeah, across our entire state, our unhoused populations are a challenge. And down here in particular, Grants Pass has been fighting the fight, but the Ninth Circuit Court has in fact tightened the screws and made it harder and harder and harder for local governments to be responsive to the needs on the street and to act in a way that offers both accountability and compassion. As governor, I will declare a homelessness state of emergency in an effort to marshal state resources and coordinate more fully with local governments. You know, there are programs that are out there currently that are focused on identifying our homeless populations on an individual basis and addressing it more of a case management approach rather than a nameless, faceless 14,000 plus people that are sleeping on our streets every night. We have got to work on this problem in an individual basis. We cannot look at this like there's one answer to all of this. We need to do this in a way that's responsive to the needs of the Oregonians that are currently homeless, and we have got to recognize that this adversely impacts communities, and they deserve to have their communities back.
I really want to like Christine, but she's just
No
so
more
fucking
plans,
boring.
no more talking about this problem. We've got to treat it urgently. If a fire had wiped out a